Okay, we're back live again. Let's see if this works a little bit better. We upped it to 1080p, changed up the title and the description, and we should be better off now. I'm going to put on some lo-fi. All right, so in my OBS, something seems a little glitched. Trying to figure out what screen that even is. Okay, my OBS is giving me some grief at the moment. I'm going to have to close it. Maybe. All right, so bear with me. Sorry about the delays and the issues here. I'm going to have to force quit OBS and just restart that, but the stream will stay live. There we go. Okay. So now, restarting OBS. And we're seeing the right screen and everything. I just do the virtual cam. Okay, there we go. That's a little better. Cool. So yeah, sorry, OBS was glitched a bit. All right, so I should be able to see chat again. And all right, cool. Yeah, so real quick, I'm going to tweet this, or not tweet this, but show it off to some friends. Still says the title over on Twitter is DEVEXDAYS live stream, even though I changed it. So that's interesting. We'll just have to deal with it. All right, cool. Let me post this to the rest of my community. So yeah, first time doing this. We may have some hiccups. We're going to figure it out. But I'm going to get to some live coding here in just a second. Let me just do a little bit more here. And there we go. All right, so welcome everyone. How you doing? What you up to? I will be getting to some live coding here in just a second. If you have any questions or anything, feel free to chat. I'm going to be using a thing called XDism. And this is in prep for a talk I'll be giving at SquiggleConf. It's going to be in Boston, pretty cool conference. So basically, my talk is going to be about XDism. And XDism is a way of doing, like a plugin system for your applications. I'm going to be doing that a bit with the GitKraken CLI, which I need to get the right screen showing. Okay. So I do think I need to be somewhat careful about what code I do show from the CLI, but we can go through some of the install process steps first with what we're doing. But keep in mind, DevX Days, super cool. Definitely check it out. If you have any questions, let me know. But I will post the link over here just in case you want it. Okay. And yeah, I wish this chat could pop out. That would be really, really nice. I don't think we want to do it as an overlay though. But maybe I can just drag this to the other screen. That would help. And then I'll just keep an eye on it over there. Okay. So yeah. XDism stuff. What I just did is I scaffolded out, just an empty project here. I'm thinking just for simplicity, I'm going to use Go as the language I do the plugin with. But, and the reason it's for simplicity is because the CLI tool is also written in Go. So there's less like juggling of the APIs of XDism while I'm still learning and figuring it out. So as we see here, and hold on, let's see, can I make this bigger? Let's make that bigger. Perfect. I installed the XDism CLI tool. Cool. What else do we need to kind of get started in what we're doing here? So the first aspect is we can go to their quick start. And let's just say, let's hop to the writing a plugin part. They have some really good docs per like language you might want to use. Right? Because we're going to be using Go, we're going to select that, and I need to generate a plugin. And I think I can just do it into this folder. So what do I actually have in here? Oh, I did a git init. That's right. So I'm going to remove the plugin and restart. And, let's look at what GitKraken CLI tool actually looks like. So, let's just say we wanted to look at Launchpad. That's one of the nice features about it. You get this same thing in GitKraken Desktop. You get this in GitLens. You get this in gitkraken.dev. Pretty much anywhere you want to work. There are going to be slight differences based on the platform it's being shown in. But yeah, we get to see what PRs I might have available. I have it fairly zoomed in for you. And actually, I'm going to make this not full screen, but on its own screen still. And that way I can move this over so you're not getting it cut off. That way you can see all of the stuff that I'm typing. There we go. Cool. So yeah, let's zoom out a little bit. Make sure you can see the bottom of it where I'm going to be typing commands. And yeah, so there we go. We can see that I have unassigned reviewers. We can see that CI failing is, happening on at least one of these. All right, we can look at the issues we have assigned. We can look at work in progresses. Now, some of this text is cut off because of how zoomed in I have it for stream. So in your terminal, you probably get a little bit more information on what this PR is. And yeah, again, let me just zoom out more so we can see a bit more of it. All right, there we go. And yeah, some of the nice parts are there's like a help file, or not help file, but help command we can do to like look at what else we can do in here, such as switching our providers, switching our issue tracker. What we want to do is at least start thinking about what we might want to make extensible about this. And we can do it in a very basic way first, right? We can just send out messages to our plugin and log them somewhere and see what's happening, right? But to make an actual fun, like useful plugin system, we need to actually expose events that we're going to send out to any plugin that we want to install. And what is that process going to look like? How do we even set that up? I don't know. Because this is a CLI tool, we could maybe go in and update what arguments we can accept. I think I can probably show some of that code. And then like when we change the arguments, we might pass in a path to plugins we want. That can be useful. I'm not sure if we're using Viper for this tool. I believe we're using Cobra. Again, it's a Go tool. But with Viper, you would be able to like maybe save that configuration to your home folder. So Viper and Cobra work very closely together to make really nice CLI tools. The UI stuff you're seeing right here is Bubble Tea or Charm Bracelet. Like Bubble Tea is a library by Charm. And yeah, it's pretty cool stuff. So yeah, I want to think about, or at least keep it in the back of my mind, what events or things would we want to send out to a possible plugin? We don't know, and we don't have to like do it officially. That's totally fine. This is more about discovery, figuring out how to use XDism, and seeing what we do. So yeah, I'm going to quit out for now. We did create that that folder, right? So yep, if we see it, CLI plugin, and pop that open. So now we've got this. It gives us a basic main.go in which we might want to do a hello world kind of thing just to like make sure stuff's working, which we could totally do. But how would we see that? Like, where would that even happen? Like, how do we get this output? And what I'm thinking is maybe we just run like a local mock server that just echoes whatever we send to it. That way we can take stuff in here, send stuff out to the mock server. So what if maybe you have a like your own telemetry and tooling and stuff like that you want to wire up? I don't know if that's the right move, but at least we will be able to see something out of it. So let's try that. And again, this is my first time making this Go version of things, so it's going to be a little trickier. I did fiddle with it a little bit yesterday, but let's get started setting some of that up. So really, I'm going to spin up just a super simple like node server. And that node server is just going to take in a message or payload that we pass it and echo that payload out to the terminal. So let's do that. I always forget the boilerplate for an Express project. It's easy enough. Let's head over to, let's see, we're in those two. Let's go in here. make a new one. We're going to make a new directory, and it's going to be called just echo server. Do a yarn init, just because that's what I have installed already. I do prefer PNPM most of the time. We're not going to worry about doing this as TypeScript or any of that. We're going to add Express. All right, so we've got that. We could do a get in it, sure. And then let's pop this open to an editor. All right, so one thing I'm going to do before I get too much further into some of this stuff is I want to move that sidebar to the right. And I forget how to do that. Code, settings, settings. And then this is sidebar. Right. It's just nicer for streaming because of where I have my camera right now. Okay, so got our settings there. We're going to create an index.js file. Ooh. And I'm going to grab just the boilerplate from the Express, not Express Clothing, Express.js. Their website's a bit slow. There's a joke we could make there. We'll refrain. And yeah, getting started. Let me just grab the boilerplate a bit. Here we go. Oh, did that not copy? All right, so we've got the hello world there. Let's create the echo endpoint. Let me configure my spaces. All right, and then we're going to console.log rec.body. Sure, nice and easy. I don't think we need to worry about encoders or any of that stuff, like, you know, body encoding or formatting or any of that. Body parser stuff, that's the word. And yeah, we'll call that good, right? We just want to echo this to the terminal once we get it running. All right, so the Echo server is up and running. Let's see. So for the CLI plugin, we have scaffolded it out. And from here, I need to make an HTTP request in Go. And I totally forget that syntax. So it's actually pretty simple. We are going to want to do a post request, and we're going to want to figure out what we have to send for that. But yeah, should be okay. And yeah, we don't have that buffer yet. It is struct, right? So yeah, I haven't written enough Go lately. I don't have all of this stuff memorized. Okay, so yeah, we want to, there it is. It's type. That's the boilerplate for it. So let's just say this is payload, right? I don't remember if it needs to be public. We can make it public anyway. And then from here, we're just going to do name. Sure. So that package is in there. We do need to pass a new struct, and that is going to be buff. I'm trying to remember if I know this syntax. Yeah, it would just be payload and name is name. Right. Oh, and I think we just do name. Right. Hold on. Oh, that's how we have to do it. Okay, we could do inline structs too. Got it. Why was it yelling at that? Oh, because name might not be a string here? Ah, we just need the comma. Okay, right. If we're going to do it that way, I could have done it inline. That was it. So then here we just do this, and then we're going to call it payload. That's a better name. All right, extremely simple. Now, they don't like this because it doesn't implement IO reader. So what we need to do is convert payload into something that we can actually send. So string to IO reader. I kind of like this music. It's like it's, you know, yeah, good lo-fi. But okay, so we would create a reader, and I can zoom in on this a bit. Okay, so I think we would want to do like the string length for the size of that buffer, right? Pretty sure. And again, I haven't written that much Go lately. Oh, but hold on. We don't want to do this as like from the string. We want to turn that payload into something that we can send as a post. And that means we probably need to JSON marshal it, right? I think that's it. So we don't care about unmarshalling it. That would be fine. Marshalling the text. No, we don't want to marshal text. We could use Anthropic or something for this. But Stack Overflow is fine. So we do have to do the bytes.new buffer thing from the JSON. That's actually pretty straightforward. Okay. And the part that we needed here was bytes new buffer. All right, so now we got to do the right thing. If, and we don't do that. All right, we have a failure. We could probably even do like os.exit, but I think we want to use numbered return codes because of how xdism is going to consume this stuff. But we could also do a format print line. Yeah. I'm not sure where this is going to get printed, so that's a little interesting to me. We'll figure it out. And this is just going to be could not marshal into JSON. From here, if could not, could not send payload to endpoint. And that endpoint is going to be echo. This is going to be localhost 3000. And we might not actually care about the response because we're going to be looking elsewhere for it. So we can just do that, I think. Maybe? No? But they do the no new variables thing. That should be fine. Okay, so this is the gist of our greet function, which is going to be exported as greet to our CLI tool. So what I want to do maybe is I can show a little bit of what our Go code is there, as long as I get to a top level that makes sense. So let me just get to the, what file would make sense? I'll just do the README file for now, once I get this dragged over. Okay, and just pull this to right here, get that in a new window, and cool. So we got the CLI code. All right, nothing overly proprietary in here. What I'm thinking is I kind of want to just put this at like the root command level, right? So when we just launch this up, and there's nothing proprietary about just the the Cobra like wrapping of the CLI. So I don't think we have any problems there showing this. And yeah, we're still figuring things out. So coworker is going to hop into the studio on Restream, and we'll see if things break when that happens. I believe they should be able to join Restream. Okay. And they just said they hopped on and it didn't break anything. Which is nice. All right, so looking at what we got here, we could just do the XDism part on our own. But one thing I want to do first, before I get too far, let me make sure I have the CLI actually up to date. Ooh, do I not have the SSH key set up right for that? It's fine, because this is just discovery. We're not worried about making a full-on pull request for this yet, possibly ever. We don't need to worry about being able to push this up. So yeah, that'll be fine. From there, yeah, we've got our greet. Let me shuffle these a bit. And we want to start looking at the XDism boilerplate for no longer writing a plugin, because I think we got one. We'll have to figure it out. But let's go see what running a plugin looks like. So we're going to do that in Go again. And we do need to install the package. All right, so yeah, WA0 I think is some like WASM stuff. Wouldn't mind checking this out and seeing what it is though. I always like to look into the packages that we're installing. Okay, so it's a WASM core specification compliant runtime written in Go. Gotcha. So that's really what is responsible for running the WASM code. And then XDism is more like doing some of the glue around it. Cool. All right, so the thing I was thinking about earlier is in like the end state of this, we would probably want to make sure that the plugins are dynamically loaded, which is why we probably want to make sure they're coming from a command line argument that we pass. For now, we're not going to do that part. So for now, we're just going to do just a hard-coded wiring of things. But basically, the goal is that the CLI is a binary. And that binary, you can't modify it really once you've shipped it. So being able to get in there and configure which plugins get loaded is not something you would do as part of like the CLI tools, like source code and configuration. We would need to make that dynamic. And to do that would require a command line argument, because we don't want to hard code what plugins people are using. That defeats the purpose of extensibility. So instead, we want to allow people to add their own plugins, create their own, and consume them. So that'll happen eventually. We're going to wait on that part because I just want to see things wired up a bit. And yeah, we'll do it here at the top. Why not? So as we get back to what we need to do, there is this count vowels WASM. We could just wire that one up real quick. And I do at least want to see like how it works and all that. So yeah, let's just grab this entire boilerplate. Right, before we even wire up to our other, like, you know, the plugin we just made, let's see how this works. So then from there, we need to call the plugin, and that would be something like this. Now, I think in many cases, you would probably have the instantiation of this plugin somewhere else, and then you would simply use that plugin elsewhere, right? But again, right now we're just doing this quick and dirty just to feel it out. And once we know what's possible, etc., we might start crafting like what our plans are. So for now, let's just keep doing this using their boilerplate, and then let's try and consume the thing that we made. So if I were to then go here and do go run, do we have a main file that I need to open? Just trying to see where the entry point for this is, basically. All right. And yeah, I got to be careful clicking around too much because I don't want to dox some of the important stuff. I think it is root command. And in fact, hold on, let me just pull this over. I want to go look at our make file real quick. And just in case, there could be secrets or something in there that we don't want to leak. So I'm going to look at that over here. All right, it does look pretty safe so far. Ah, I see. I see where the main.go file is now. Okay. And let me double check to see if that has anything we shouldn't show either. Oh. Well, hold on. Plot thickens. And yeah, there's really nothing truly like proprietary in here yet that I've seen. Right? It's just standard makefile stuff. So I could probably show this. I see now. Okay. I see now. Okay, I was looking in the wrong folder. None of that looks too crazy. Like the main.go file looks fine. But yeah, the main.go file is what I would want to call. So go run cmd slash gk slash main.go. Ooh, buddy. Ah, and this is where we run into probably some other stuff that I would need set up. Okay, so I may need to confer with some of the other devs who work on the CLI to make sure I can get up and running. I think URLs and directories are the main things I'm seeing there. So it should be pretty easy. And maybe it's something I missed in the README for setting it up. Let me look at this real quick. I could just build it. Hold on. Just double checking what's in our README. I think I can show that again. Yeah, none of that's proprietary either. I think we're good. So basically, the steps I think I was missing. I might need to just do a build. And then run that binary. Yeah, let's do that. But you know what? I don't need to move it. I don't mind doing the local path. So let's at least see if this runs. And I don't have any of the environment variables that could leak, so I think we're good there. But let me do this. And it's possible that we still run into those same errors. But yeah, the go run, I think, was missing those things that maybe the make file is setting up for us. Looks better already, doesn't it? And hey, what's up? How you doing, Kyle? Yeah, you have me up while you work? And yeah, how you doing, Chaotic? Mr. Sir. Yeah, cheers. Welcome. How's the stream? Any feedback? Anything that we could do better? This is our first time using Restream, so we may have some tricky bits that we could do better. So yeah, anyone out there watching on any of the channels, let us know, and yeah, we'll work on improving it. I'll be streaming from 10 a.m. to noon all days this week, so should be pretty fun. And it looks like it built. Okay. So yeah. We run ./gk and boom, that was the result from the count vowels. So we actually have this wired up now. That's awesome. Pretty cool. So now I guess the next step, let's try and wire up the one that we have that's going to be doing an HTTP request. That could be a little more fun. So yeah, awesome. Let me shuffle some of these around a bit better. Because CLI plugin is what we're working on now. So in here, we've got this part. That's actually good to go. So what I want to do now is, yep, never mind. We're going to head back to here. Pop this open to its own window. And yeah, I'm glad that was actually able to build. That was really nice. What we want to do now is head back to that package command, root command. This stuff is then still, once again, going to run before all of the other stuff because we're still just demoing and testing. And once we've kind of figured out a little bit more of what we want to do there, I think it's time for some like planning on what a plugin for the CLI tool would actually benefit from doing. And yeah, that'll take some thought. But count vowels.wasm. We don't care about that. So before we get too far ahead, we actually need to build our CLI plugin. And Let's go to their Go PDK docs. Oop, that opened over here on the side. Let's clean up some tabs. Oh, I'll leave Squiggle Conf open though. All right, so yeah, it's very interesting. With XDism, they have basically two sets of like SDKs, but to differentiate them, they have the PDK, which is the plugin development kit, and the SDK is what you would integrate into your applications. So yeah, let's continue going along. There is a build command we're going to have to run. We do need to install TinyGo. Aha. And oh no! Oh no! Oh, I was hoping to avoid a brew install. Oh well. C'est la vie. For anyone curious, I am drinking on some Earl Grayer tea. I don't know what makes it grayer, but it's from the Republic of Tea. Pretty tasty. No sugar, nothing. Trying to watch the sugar intake. Oh, sorry, I missed the chat message. Did I lose that tab? I'm still connected, right? I didn't mess that up, right? Okay. Yeah, I don't know where my restream chat went to. That's a little annoying. Like that tab just vanished. So yeah, I'm gonna need my coworker to relay the chat stuff to me, I guess. Like, how did that tab disappear? I've been having Chrome issues all day. I just don't know. That tab is gone. Did I minimize it? All right. Well, always tricky stuff going on. But so basically the TLDR for this project is I am giving a talk at SquiggleConf, which is a conference about dev tools. And what I will be talking about is a thing called XDism. And XDism is basically a plugin framework using WASM as an intermediate layer. So your application could be written in JavaScript, C, C++, Elixir, Go, Haskell, Java, or Kotlin maybe. I think Kotlin has a different logo, but whatever. .NET, Node.js, OCaml. What is the other camel? Perl. Oh, Perl uses a camel too? Huh. Okay. PHP, Python, Ruby, Rust, and Zig. right? Your application could be written in any of those. And as long as you have something that compiles to WASM, you can bring that into there. So you can have a plugin system for any of these binaries, allowing people to extend your applications via APIs you expose, but meaning that binary doesn't have to be modified, etc. Really, really cool. But the idea is also they don't have to write in the language that you wrote your application in. So it gives your consumers of your application way more power of like how they want to extend things. So I think it's a really, really cool idea. I haven't done nearly enough with it. And yes, I had a talk accepted for it. This is proposal-driven development, or accepted proposal-driven development. But I'm fairly confident we can make a really good talk about this. And yeah, so my coworker is letting me know I could maybe hop back in. I want to be hesitant about that just because I've been having performance issues, and getting it going twice would probably kill my machine. So yeah, please just keep an eye on chat, coworker. I don't know if you want your name doxed, but yeah, like as comments and questions come in, I'm happy to respond. I think tomorrow I'll try and get the chat more visible for me in a different way, and we should be good. So a couple hiccups on the first stream, first time using Restream. My fault, but we'll figure it out. And yeah, so did that help answer your question about the gist of this project? For the most part, I'm still going through like the basics of setting up XDism, right? We ran their plugin, which allowed us to see this like count vowels output that we're putting at a terrible place in our app, but we're still just seeing how that integration could work. And our next steps are to see how to build our plugin that we just created. And the plugin is very simple. All it's going to do is take in a name or a string from the application, pass it to this WASM plugin. The WASM plugin is then going to just send it out to an HTTP server. I just want to know if that works. I ran into issues doing that from the JS side of things, and that could have just been a flaw with the JS PDK plugin development kit. I did fiddle with this stuff a little bit yesterday and ran into some issues, so that's why I'm using Go as well. And once we've gotten this working, maybe I try and do it in Rust, or try and do it in Elixir or something else, just to make sure that we understand how this process is working, what the differences between installing some of these tools might be like. And yeah, image JPEG is totally incorrect. There we go. So yeah, this is just a rudimentary thing. We have a node server that is going to be listening and just printing out whatever stuff we send to it. And I want to see if that works. So now we're going to, after we finished installing TinyGo, it did finish, right? Yep. We need to actually compile it, and their compilation step in here is tinygo build-o, the plugin.wasm is the output, the target is wasi, and main.go. Cool. We could actually even call this. So we can call it directly, which is kind of nice, but we'd have to compile it first. So yeah, awesome. And I should zoom in so you guys can actually read some of this. So yeah, let's compile it. I did see that we have a make file that got scaffolded for us. It looks like, yeah, okay. So at this point, we could just use make to do this stuff. And Right now I'm being prompted if I want to install Makefile tools. Sure. Do we want to configure C++ IntelliSense? Sure. Okay. So I'm wondering what that actually did for us. I do see, yeah, we see Makefile over here, and I could probably just run the build. No, it just jumps us to it. Oh, no, I could run it. So yeah, if we do a build, oh, nice. I kind of like that. Okay. We could always run this ourselves too, but nice. And yeah, sorry I can't see chat, but yeah, my coworker will relay any questions you have to me, so just feel free. The compile takes a little longer than I would have expected because it's such a small plugin. But that could be because my machine is a bit bogged down from streaming to restream, which is something I think I'm going to use my stream PC from my normal stream as the restream publisher, and then I can just do a screen capture from the Mac Mini or from my work MacBook. I think that might be the move. Yeah, how's everyone doing? What's your day like? Again, check out DEVEXDAYS. You know, we have a massive discount on Get Crackin', up to 80% off in some locations. It is region specific, of course, though. And yeah, when you go to check out, just use code DEVEXDAYS24. It may be case sensitive, so make sure you capitalize it. I don't know if it is. We should probably double check that. And yeah, while this is going, let me just show off what our CLI does as well, right? Because we can do GK, we can go do like the help command and see what stuff we have available, right? There's a command for changing our account, right? What organizations we're a part of. That basically just links us out to the browser. The commit graph is something that is also not in the CLI. It would just link us out to the Get Crackin' client or VS Code, which I do think there could be an interesting use case for a better Git log. We may allow people to set this up. And really, like, the tough part is this doesn't show like the branching nature of it, but it is a better Git log at that minimum. But it's actually somewhat similar to what our commit graph ends up looking like. So yeah, maybe at some point that's something we can get in there too. So cannot run because there is no launch configuration. I'd say that's fine. Yep, totally fine there. And then it looks like test doesn't get run. So I'm just going to run that directly from the command line. Oh, and wrong folder. And it is case sensitive. I just got confirmation. So make sure you're typing that in all uppercase. All right, so this calls our plugin with the hello world, and we get a WASM error unreachable. Looks like it was the post request, and that post request did not make it to our local server. Okay, and this is one of the issues with WASM in general. Some of this stuff is a little harder to parse than like the standard errors that we would be looking for. We do see that it was at the post request though. So let's go look at that. Now the thing is, we do have WASI, so we should be able to post this, but maybe we can't do the port directly in. So that might be me misunderstanding Golang. So it does look like request URL should be fine there, right? With the port added in. So that doesn't seem like the issue. So let me try this then. And yeah, with a post request, that's a get. Oh, hold on. So that's http.get. This is http.post. I don't think we need to worry about creating the request like that. So here we go, sending a post. This is the handler function. This is the thing sending the actual request. Oh, and that's another way we could have done that. Okay. Yeah, okay, hold on. So I think content type there does look correct, application/JSON. The body looks correct to me as well. I think the provided body that we're giving it is io.closer. So that shouldn't be an issue either. And let's close that. So yeah, this might just be a limitation of XDism, not being able to send HTTP requests. Let's double check that though. Oh, this is nice. Oh, so that's it. The PDK actually exposes out this stuff. So we can't use the native stuff. We have to use what their PDK is compiled as. Okay, that makes more sense. And PDK output memory. So I need to look more at the API for the PDK at this point. Okay, so yep. So yeah, new HTTP request is what we would actually be looking for there. Okay. And that may have been part of the issue I was having with the JavaScript stuff too. All right, so pdk.inputString. Here we do this, and we actually want to comment that. So now instead, this ends up being request is pdk.new HTTP request. The method is going to be nope. I think we can just do post. That's where we do the URL. And okay, so that is not correct. We're gonna have to look up how to do a post request with it. I think it even had it over in the boilerplate there, but that might also be a flaw. But yeah, this is actually a really nice library. This HTTP request from inside WASM. Very nicely done. I like it. Oh, it looks like we should be able to do a post. Maybe. Oh, never mind. Okay, I thought it was yelling at this previously. Now it's yelling at this. The thing that we are posting, I think it actually just wants the string. So this is a GET request. I think, okay, so instead, we probably need to do something like that. Cannot use post. And this is a fairly large file, but it's not so bad. Okay, so here we go. We see HTTP request. We see, method post is probably what I want there. There we go. All right, so that's the way to do that. And then we probably want to do something like rec.setBody. And that's what we set there. And they just want it as a buffer of bytes, right? Interesting. So hold on. The way they were sending a post request over in this tutorial, they just spread it into a byte around this. Okay. Cool. So coworker has to step away for a bit. But yeah, like, how do y'all like this thing so far? I think in the future, there's stuff we could do to maybe do like a regular stream. You know, maybe at some point do like an office hours thing where people could ask questions about Git, like how to learn, things like that. If you have questions about Git in general, feel free. And yeah, I can't see the chat right now, so that's getting me. But yeah, for the most part, they just want the byte wrapper. So I don't think we want to do the buffer thing. So then if we send that, will it blend? So now we got to go rebuild this thing. Yeah, this takes a little longer than I was expecting. One thing I think I want to do is create some notes for myself. And in this file, I basically just want to record some of these things that we discover. So number one, HTTP methods need to use PDK supply, or HTTP requests need to use the PDK supplied methods instead of native methods. It's true for Go and JS so far. Okay, cool. Another thing I like is the XDism CLI scaffolding for plugins is nice. It's another good note. I'm so confused about not having that tab anymore, though. Yeah, I probably need to reboot my my Mac. But hey, we finished building. Oop. Type that in the wrong place. So let's test it. Will it blend? It blended there. We did not get the node server to respond, though. So it didn't panic on us. Oh, that's right. We have to actually send the request. And yeah, since we already have that, I think we'll do that. right? And we do .send. Looks like we only get back the response. Sure. Okay, so we got to recompile that. I made a mistake there. We do a make test, and we get a failure. HTTP request to localhost 3000/echo is not allowed. Interesting. We know the server is running. Okay, so here they're spinning up. They're spinning up the server here, which is fine. Hold on. So where is the plugin? Oh, okay. So yeah, they're just calling out to the plugin that already exists. Oh, but that's a different plugin config than I was expecting. Okay, no. So we create a manifest and we pass a wasm file path. Wasm file path is an argument. So yeah, this is very similar to what we would end up doing if we were trying to like actually wire up to the CLI's command line arguments right now, which we're not, but we can. So awesome. I think the big problem here is this isn't actually making a request from the WASM. Oh, interesting. So a mutex would be necessary because of the threading. Got it. Okay, so this is actually a cool article. Very different than what I was looking for, though. Because, right, we're trying to make a request from inside of the WASM. I kind of doubt. Well, hold on. Let's do this. Let's set the header too. Let's try and rebuild that. I think it's still going to be a failure, though. So why would that be a failure? Like maybe it requires HTTPS? At which point, here's a tool to use. MKcert is the tool. All right, so, we'll just do one more test just to be sure. Node server didn't work. So we'll see if maybe HTTPS is the issue, but I'm not entirely certain. But it's worth a shot, right? Okay, so we installed MKcert. We're actually going to run its install command. All right, so I don't think we need NSS. That's just for Firefox. So that should be okay. And then from there, right, we did the install. I think it's just make cert localhost. And yeah, if you haven't seen MKcert before, it's pretty cool. Okay, so theoretically, we have a certificate there now, and I think let's just try it. Curl HTTPS localhost 3000. They hate it. Let's at least make sure the regular works, right? So we get the hello world there. We don't get it there. This site can't provide a secure connection. And I believe that's because we're not running the right port. Because HTTPS is typically over 443, right? Let's double check this web.dev article, just to be sure. Oh. Aha. So our Express server probably needs some of that. I'm not seeing the place to set that there. Hold on. So they show it with Node. They show it with HTTP-server. Okay, so hold on. We're going to remove those, and we're going to go do it over here. mkcert localhost. And I forget the way to do this with Express. We'll just go look it up. Express.js. Okay. So that's the way they want to do that. Let's see. So key cert, right? That's going to be options. App.listen is a separate bit. And I think, yeah, we actually comment that out for now. And then from here, the key is localhost. Actually, hold on. That's the key. So yeah. Localhost key.pm and localhost. There we go. Oh, FS is not defined. Oops. I guess I don't have any auto linting or prettier set up on this machine. Oops. Oh, I do have prettier. Whatever. HTTPS is not defined. Yep, got to bring that in. And that's its own library. Why did they bring in HTTP, though? I don't think that was necessary. consistent. And we're not logging anything, but it's up, right? So now if we were to, hey, all right, and that is an HTTPS. Awesome. Okay. So now we'll see if that's the actual issue there with running our test plugin. It still fails out. Oh, hold on. We have to recompile after editing path. You can just type megabuild. Okay. Double checking. Looks like no other questions so far. Right now, I only see the Twitter stuff. So, yep. If you have questions on other platforms, I'm sorry, I can't see it at the moment. My coworker's in a meeting right now, so they may not see it either. But yeah, feel free, ask any questions, and we will get to them as soon as we can. And yeah, in about 5 to 10 minutes, we're going to switch what the content is. The live stream will keep going. We're going to be playing some of our previous content stuff, maybe from GitCon, which is a conference we put on. We put it on last year. I believe we're planning on doing one this year as well. No guarantees. That's just my thoughts. I have no idea. But yeah, GitCon is a pretty cool thing, like cool conference. Yeah, last year we had Samwise from Lord of the Rings, Sean Astin. He was like the MC or keynote or something like that, which is cool. But we get this same error now. So it is not the HTTP versus HTTPS. Let's see if it's the port. Now I think to run on 443, because it's less than 1,000, I might have to do a sudo here. Let's double check it here. That worked. Okay, so let's try and do this without the port. Maybe that'll work. Sorry, coworker just reached out. Okay, so no new chats so far in any of the other platforms. Cool. Let me just double check something for a different coworker. And yeah, how y'all liking what we're doing so far? Is it fun? You enjoying it? Oh, and actually, I'm seeing this stuff over on YouTube, not Twitter. Sorry. But yeah, how's everyone on YouTube? What you up to? Anything fun besides watching this? All right, so HTTP request to localhost echo is no good. Huh. Is it just localhost that's not allowed? What's a good open API that we can hit, right? Like Star Wars API? All right, so we're gonna do a get request, and that's gonna be to there /people/1, just to see if we can even do it. Oh, and yeah, we're gonna have to do some of this just because of how strict Go is about leaving stuff in there. And yeah, so I've got a meeting coming up here soon too. We're going to pivot our content to seeing some of our GitCon stuff, and maybe even just show like a quick ad about DevX days, etc. You know, I will let my coworker take that one over. And yeah, I at least want to see. Okay, so for some reason, I'm not able to make any HTTP requests. That doesn't necessarily make this game breaking, but I do want to at least make a note of that for myself for the future. And then we'll have to maybe brainstorm about what we would want to do to make sure that we're actually getting some of this stuff somewhere, right? Maybe write to a file. We'll see if we can do that. So it didn't work for me at all so far, even with supplied methods. So then here, pivot to trying local file system rights /login. Okay. So yeah, I think we've got some good context for what we want to do next time. And I will be here all week. So I'll see y'all tomorrow at 10 a.m. Pacific, 1 p.m. Eastern, and whatever other time zone you're in, you can do the math. But I am going to pass things to my coworker here, and she is going to get some videos going. And yeah, because I still don't have that window. Let's see how this works. Can I switch to that tab? No. Let me try it over here. Maybe I closed it by accident. This is a little off. I don't know what happened, but I may be live twice. I am in. Oh. I'm in there twice. Let me mute the tab. There we go. Okay. Can y'all still hear me? I'm going to need to disconnect. We're not going to be ending stream. And coworker, go ahead and switch to the video. And I will see y'all again tomorrow.
Welcome, GitCon attendees. My name is Matt Johnston. I am the CEO of GitKraken, and I'm really excited to be joined today by CTO and co-founder of HubSpot, Dharmesh Shah. Dharmesh, thanks for sitting down with us.
Thanks for having me.
I'd love to start just by hearing your origin story. I've known you, by the time I got to know you a bit, you were already at HubSpot, and HubSpot was really starting to build something and starting to take off. But where did you grow up? Where did you study? And then where did your passion for, coding and building come from?
I was born in a small town in India. And small town in India is like, it was 50,000 people, but, no hospital. And, growing up, my high school had exactly 0 computers. Then I went to undergrad engineering school, 1,000 plus students. And I think we had 6 computers across the entire university at the time I was doing undergrad. And the amount of time I spent on any of those 6 computers was exactly 0. I never got to touch a single one because the ratio was so high.
Undergrad?
This is undergrad, engineering school too. This is undergrad. And so it just, it's one of those things, and it's I don't regret that, but it does kind of bug me a little bit because I got a late start, right? And then my kind of falling in love moment with computers and software development happened. I was visiting, from India, visiting my parents who happened to be here in Indiana, and Purdue University had a campus near where my parents were, and people had always told me, it's like, oh, you like mathy stuff, you should check out this computer stuff. That's all I sort of knew,
Right.
And so Purdue had like a summer course on like introduction to computers, which is basically like a DOS operating system class, and an introduction to programming class that summer. And I took both of them, and I remember like sitting down for the first time, just going through the DOS thing. And there was this is the I'm going to date myself, which I'm completely comfortable with because the universe has dated me already, so that's it's not a big deal. But I remember sitting down, I'm like, this makes sense. So there was this kind of DOS operating manual there. That's like the reference manual for all the commands you can type into the operating system. And I read the whole thing back to back, and then it's like, and from that moment, I sort of knew that this is the thing I was like meant to do. I mean, it was really that epiphany moment. To the degree that I was just visiting for the summer, visiting my parents. I had planned to go back and finish up my engineering undergrad in India, and didn't go back. Enrolled in computer science undergrad at Purdue, and said, okay, this is what I'm doing. I'm all in, and like hadn't brought any of my stuff, hadn't said goodbye to my friends, didn't do any of that. This is the thing, and so have not looked back. It's been 30 plus years now.
Well, I was just going to ask, what would it, if you had gone back? I was going to say, boy, did you go through withdrawal after getting like your first real exposure and your first real, like that's what was meant for me. But you didn't even have to go through withdrawal. You just said, no, that's what's meant for me. And
that's what's meant for me. Yeah. I don't know that I could have stood once like I saw the light, so to speak, or saw the opportunity. And I didn't even think of it as an opportunity. I just thought of it as like this clicks for me, right? It's going to sound cliche, but it's like, falling in love with your kind of, with your partner. It's like, okay, like I sort of knew like early on, like there's something here. So anyway.
Yeah, it just made sense. And it was,
it's
really cool when what you're describing to me, the word that comes to mind is calling, right? Yeah. It's I didn't find a career, I found a calling. Like this is what I was put here to do.
Yep.
Very, very cool. The two things that jump out to me there, one, you mentioned getting a late start. And I think oftentimes especially, in kind of modern times, always connected, social media, able to compare myself in real time to everyone else. It's easy to say like, well, I got a late start, so why bother?
Yeah.
And you're living proof and coding proof that's not the case. And the other one is access, right? It'd be really easy to say, like, I didn't have access. I was in undergrad in engineering school and hadn't been able to touch a computer.
Yep.
So I think those are both really just valuable and vivid illustrations of, like, just because you are starting later than someone else, you don't have the same access as someone else, doesn't mean you can't go create amazing things.
Yeah, I agree. I'm biased, but I agree.
Yeah. Shifting over to HubSpot, was there a moment or a milestone that you kind of said, wow, like, this isn't just a startup, oh, we raised funding, but like this is a movement. This is something that really has staying power and impact on small businesses around the world?
Had some evidence early on that that this could be a thing, right? Because we built, and for those that are not familiar, HubSpot, the company that I founded, now it's been 17 years ago. We started in the marketing software space, and what was interesting there is we actually kicked off this movement this category called inbound marketing that didn't exist at the time, and this was in kind of reaction to what we thought was really crappy marketing that had existed for a long time, which is, hey, I'm going to blast the world with my messages, I'm going to spam them, I'm going to cold call them, I'm going to do all these not only less than desirable things, but also decreasingly effective. So what was kind of interesting about the HubSpot story is that movement actually sort of grew in parallel, and the product didn't exist, not really, right? So we kind of sparked that idea. It's like, hey, wouldn't it be nicer if marketing was a noble profession? Wouldn't it be nicer if we actually added value to the people we were trying to sell to? And now we take some of these things for granted. We look at the open source community, we look at product-led growth and things like that, which we should talk about. But it's like, how do I add value to the world? And that kind of pulls people in to my company, into my business, and that's where customers will come from. It's just a much better way to market. And so that we had lots of nodding of heads, and this is back when blogging and Web 2.0 and all those things were first happening. And then in terms of like a milestone around the product itself, it kind of grew relatively, I'll say smoothly, kind of oscillated around, right? And every startup has kind of the moments of near death, which we did too. But no kind of standout. It's like, oh, we woke up on a Monday morning and all of a sudden traffic went up 10x, or we got 8 times the customers. That never really happened. There was no kind of defining moments like, oh, here's the point at which we figured out that this is actually might be a thing.
There's no in every fundraising deck, there's always the hockey stick. There was never that inflection point. It was just kind of the steady progression.
Yeah, it was. Yeah. It was funny. Like when we did our early fundraising, we actually refused to kind of draw out that hockey stick because we're like, because I say this a little bit cavalierly, but it's like startup pitch decks, especially the financial projections, are basically works of fiction, right? It's like layers of assumptions upon assumptions upon assumptions that really don't serve any purpose in my mind.
So I am curious, HubSpot is, in addition to having its roots in marketing software, and I have to say, I first started using HubSpot back in 2008. I was a VP of marketing at a company at the time called UTest, and the alternatives were just cumbersome. They felt like they were built for, Fortune 500, and even then, just really, really tough. I will also say that GitKraken is a voracious user of HubSpot's entire suite, from sales to support to marketing. So for what it's worth, we run our business on HubSpot.
That's awesome. Thank you.
And Dharmesh is not paying me to say that. He's not going to give me a discount either. But no, it is really a great product for not just small businesses, but growing, scaling businesses up to, frankly, very large companies. HubSpot was always a marketing juggernaut. As you mentioned, we kind of defined and created this category of inbound marketing. In the early days, did that make it more difficult to figure out the features to build in the product? Because marketing's kind of defined this and we have to live up to that. Or was it still just, no, product's going to have, we're listening to customers, we know what we're building. I guess what I'm asking was product direction impacted by being a category creator?
Yeah, the two, they didn't completely overlap, right? So, and this is both made it easier and harder at the same time, which is when you're creating yes, categories like the product category, and that's the thing marketers and folks like to talk about. But what we were really doing is creating a movement, right? It was not intended to be a product category. It was a new way to do marketing, which and we made a couple of very deliberate choices when we did that, which is okay. Well, if this is like the new way to do marketing, which we think is right, and we got some validation from the world at large. We intentionally did not trademark the term, right? So we called it inbound marketing, which we made up, and we wanted others to use it. It's like, okay, if this is really going to be a movement, we can't own it. So this is a bit of an open sourcey kind of approach to category creation, which is the way to actually create a category is you can't be sitting out there alone talking about that category. That's not a category, right? And then too many people hug their new categories too tightly, and then. When they have competitors, which was definitely the case for us, is that there's like, oh, we have an inbound marketing thing too, and we do this as well. It's like we thought that was great. The more people that adopted that idea, it's like our hope was that the pie would be big enough, the category would be large enough as a result of this, because we thought we were on the side of truth and justice, that everything else would sort of catch up over time, right? That was I
remember during one of our first dinners, I actually asked if you and Brian co-founded HubSpot. Correct me if I'm wrong. You met at MIT Business School, and I asked, was there ever like the awkward conversation about, well, who's going to be CEO? And because that's a very natural thing, right? Everyone has pride and an ego, and your answer to me was just like astoundingly self-aware, and it wasn't humble. It was just really self-aware. And you said, no, in fact, the only conversation was, I'm not doing that. Right. And there were a couple of other caveats that you had. Do you want to share those in terms of your responsibilities and being able to focus on being a builder?
Yeah. So we had, and I highly encourage, if you're ever starting a company or you find yourself, there's what I call the kind of ask hard questions meeting that you have with your co-founders, and you go through a series of things. And I actually have my list. It's like, okay, well, and early in the list is like, okay, who's going to be CEO? What are respective roles and titles going to be? Other things around dividing equity, other things around how do decisions get made. We can talk about those things. But on CEO, that was actually a really easy one, which is, and I told Brian, it's like, I don't want to be CEO. I've been CEO before and I suck at it. That's just not my thing. And he's like, great, because I've never been CEO. I want to be CEO. So that was like, okay, no argument, no debate. The second one took a little bit of discussion, which is my second thing was, not only, and I actually made it up spur of the moment because this was not in my head going into the meeting, but once I said the words around the CEO thing, I'm like, oh, and also, I don't want to have any direct reports. And he's like, oh, okay. Like, no, I mean like ever. Like in the history of the company, like ever have any direct reports. And then, it's like, okay, Dharmesh, no, I get, no, I like, Brian, I need you to look me in the eye because there's going to be a day that our VP of engineering quits or something. It's like, okay, well, why don't you just step in as interim VP of engineering, interim, whatever it is, and run this team for a little while until we kind of find a replacement. That we are going to resist the temptation to kind of pull me in those circumstances. I don't ever want to have direct reports because I don't think it's in the interest of the company, nor in my interest to do that. And I'm a very black and white, not the right term. I think binary decisions have a underrated value to them, right? Analog decisions like, oh, I'm going to put this on a spectrum of things. It's like, okay, well, we're going to do this. We're going to limit the number or whatever. And then it's like the definition changes. But say, look, I'm going to have 0 direct reports is a very clear binary statement, right? And
a lot of gray area.
There's no doubt. There's no gray area. Yeah. And we've stuck to that. It's been awesome. And there have been times where, it's been tempting, but, and I think that was one of the other kind of very impactful decisions. And not to say that I'm not involved, I'm like 100% in the company, and I just go to where I think I can add value. And if I had not made that decision, I'm a startup-y kind of guy. HubSpot has 7,000 plus employees now worldwide. I would not have lasted, right? Like I would not have been happy at the company because I'm a startup-y guy. Like if I had kind of done the conventional path and had a team of 1,000 people that I was trying to manage, I just don't think that would have worked. So anyway,
it's an awesome example for me of initially self-awareness, and being really honest with yourself and with your business partner, with those around you. But you're 17 years into it. And so it's also the discipline to not let it slide. Like you said, well, I'm sure there are plenty of times when, oh, there's a gap. Hey, maybe you could take this, this small group over here and go, run that, manage that. And so the combination of, self-awareness, and like you said, kind of having to double click on that, say, no, I'm being literal, and I mean forever, not just to start with, or not just for now. And then the discipline to stick with it, I think, is awesome. I think there are probably a lot of software developers who can really relate to and say, wait, I could be, a CTO, I could be a co-founder and not have the mundane one-on-ones and, performance reviews and the very important responsibilities that often come with, are thought to come with leadership or becoming, that operator. And so I think it's really cool. One of the things that it seems to me that it's enabled you to do within the context of HubSpot is to go find things that you believe are really needle movers and passion areas for you. And, one of them, and I'm going back forever, but HubSpot created something, I think, originally called Website Grader. And it has become more than just a website grader. But I think you told me that you actually built the prototype on a flight from Boston to San Francisco. It was like, no, I actually hacked together. And I remember being incredibly jealous because I was a CMO at the time, and I was talking to your CMO, Mike Volpe, and he said at the time it was something like, we get 40,000 free inbound leads a month. And I'm just sitting there going, wait, you get 500,000 free leads a year just because this thing? And then I found out that you had just, it wasn't that you hired an agency, and it was Dharmesh, kind of had an inkling that this could be interesting, and then just said, I have the capacity to go and actually start putting this together. More recently, I think you've done that sort of thing around the area of chat. And I think it started off as an inkling, an idea, and then it became a passion project. And I remember reading LinkedIn posts from you saying, I've been up at 1 or 2 in the morning just hacking this together. I'll have something that I want to share with you in a couple of weeks. How do you choose your passion projects?
It's a good question. So I tend to scratch my own itch, solve my own problem. So it either has to be 0 degrees removed from me or 1 degree removed. Either someone I really, really care about, someone literally in my family. So in the Website Grader case, Brian and I were constantly looking at prospective companies' websites and kind of measuring to what degree were they good at marketing, right? Because that would give us a sense for whether they were a good candidate for HubSpot. And so, I would go do a view source and look at the HTML and say, oh, they're using some good meta tags. That means they sort of have some clue as to what SEO is, right? So you have these kind of little kind of visible signals, right? And so then you would go look at their Alexa ranking. You would see if they had a social media presence. There were all these kind of signals you could look for. And then after a few weeks, I'm like, well, this is kind of painful going to kind of 8 different things. I know how to do it, and I can show Brian how to do it. And it's like, it wouldn't take me that long. So the original version of it was just built for the 2 of us, and specifically actually built for Brian. It's like, Brian, stop asking me to do this. Here's a web page. Just type the URL in. It'll tell you things that I would have kind of looked up, and I don't have to go teach you how to go view source HTML and what tags you're looking for. So it kind of grew out of that. We don't have to
go one at a time.
Yeah. And so, most of the things that I'm a tinkerer. So if I find a problem or something that's just annoying me, right? So, the thing I did in between, we'll talk about the chat thing too, because I think it's fun, but I did, it's the first time I've ever developed a game, but I developed a Wordle-like game. I don't know if, I know that's been over a year and a half ago now that it was all the craze. But it was just bothering me that there were certain features missing in Wordle, which is you couldn't play with friends, you couldn't have tournaments, you couldn't play across multiple devices because it maintained state on your local browser using local storage. And I'm like, well, that's just stupid. I'm going to go fix those things. And so I went and fixed those things. And now that game called Wordplay, wordplay.com, is crossing 18 million users. There's got a daily active user base of 25 to 30,000. And I haven't written a line of code for it in 6 months now. It's just out there. Something people enjoy. Yeah. So
that's awesome. Beyond writing code, correct me if I'm wrong, I think I remember that, and this is several years ago, that you kind of set out on a mission to define not just HubSpot's present culture, but their aspirational culture. And I believe it's called the Culture Code.
Mm-hmm.
Similarly, so it's not just that you pick a technical problem, right? That is a people challenge or a people opportunity. Yep. Just tell me a little bit about that process. Was it kind of similar that like, oh, I'm scratching my own itch. I just, it's not clear to me what the culture, how we've codified it. And then how did you embark on that? Because it was not a Dharmesh went and wrote out a deck in a weekend. It was this very thorough, collaborative process. And the end result, if you haven't read it,
Yep.
just search for HubSpot Culture Code. Is that the right phrase?
Culturecode.com. Yeah.
It's culturecode.com.
Yeah,
of course it is. It's phenomenal for companies of any stage. But I'm really curious about the process. How do you kind of uncover, I want to work on that, and then think about the process, because it's one of the few instances where it's not about building a product or writing code. It's really kind of connecting people.
Yeah, there's a fun story here, and I think it also, I always in the back of my mind as we're having this conversation, I have this little kind of gauge that goes off. It's like, okay, well, this is interesting, but will it be useful to the folks listening right now? So this is going to be both. So trust me. Nice. So here's how it went. In the early years of HubSpot, the word culture, when I say early years, like probably the first 5-6 years, the word culture had actually never been used. And I know this because most of our interactions were over email, and I went and did, and I have, we'll talk about this maybe later too. I have, anyway, we'll come back to that. So culture wasn't used. And then my co-founder, CEO Brian, he joined this CEO group of local CEOs, some big names, at the time. And so they would have these quarterly meetings. And he had been to one of, and I always kind of envisioned this as, they're going out into a field somewhere and holding hands and singing CEO songs and, talking about CEO issues, like group therapy for CEOs, which to this day, I'm not sure that's that far from the truth, candidly. But at this particular, there was one meeting where the topic and the theme was culture. And everyone was going around the circle talking about lessons learned on culture, what they're doing about culture. And then when it came to Brian's time, Brian's like, oh, we're still in the very early stages. We're still trying to build a product. We've got customers to sell. We're like, we've got like, that's a thing we aspire to hope to solve like someday.
Right.
And his CEO friends came down him pretty hard. Like, Brian, you don't get it. Like, if you don't get culture right, nothing else you do will matter. It's just a matter of time. So like, culture will define your long-term destiny as a company. Mm-hmm. That's just what it is. So it's not something you put off till later. It's like now. All right. So Brian files that away. And then he and I have one of our co-founder meetings, which is usually 3 to 5 hour dinners involving multiple bottles of wine. And he tells me, he's like, oh, I just had my CEO group meeting. I'm like, awesome. What did you learn? He's like, oh, the topic was culture. Like, great. And he's like, and so he repeats like, it's like, well, Dharmesh, like culture is super important. It defines the company's destiny. Right. I'm like, wow, that sounds highfalutin. And who am I argue? And then the next line is something that will stick with me is, so like, why don't you go do that? And I'm like, I'm not sure what you mean. He's like, culture is like, it's super important. Why don't you go do that? I'm like, Brian, you've like known me for a while now. We've been working together. Of all the people in the company that it's like least qualified to work on culture, you realize I have no direct reports. I'm like, I don't know a lot about culture, but from what little I do know, it involves people. And that's not my thing, it's like, that's not my, like, anyway. So, but I was team sport. I'm like, okay, culture important. Got it. So let's figure it out. So I did the first thing, which is like, I'm going to do a survey. And so here's a thought that I had. And this is the engineering, and the engineers in the room will love this. It's like, okay, well, what we're really saying is like, culture, I thought of as like an operating system. It's like, okay, if I could write like a Python program that made all the decisions in the company, that defined like the rules of engagement, right? Like, what would I need to know? It's like writing a function like that would, and so that was the first, the V1 of it was, if I could write a single function that measured the likelihood of success for someone joining HubSpot, what would the coefficients of that function be? We don't know the weights yet. Let's put that aside. What are the things that are correlated? So I went off and did surveys of the existing employees to try and triangulate. Anyway, and so V1 of it was a slide deck. It was 16 slides at the time that answered that question, that answered the who question. It's like, if we could like mathematically come up with a way to kind of measure likelihood of success for an individual, how well this person kind of fit our culture for whatever it is, because the culture was working, the company was doing well. And that's why, by the way, it's called the culture code. Inside story, which is most people, when they see that, they're like, oh, it's a code of conduct or a moral code around how companies should operate and the relationship between employees. No, it was like, if I could write Python code to run the company, here's what it would be. And this makes like the top 3 list of things I've learned. And so from that point forward, kind of the big epiphany I had is that really culture is actually a product.
Yeah.
And every company actually builds 2 products. They build one product for their customers, and they build another product for their people, for their employees.
Yeah.
And once you take that frame of mind, so let's just stipulate that maybe that's right. Let's just say, if you kind of pull on that thread, that's like, okay, well, you would never build a product for customers without asking the customers whether it was working for them or not, what the bugs were, future. It's like, and so we did that. So every quarter, in the same way that we would get product feedback, we would get feedback from the employees who are the customers of the culture and say, oh, like what's working, what's not working. And then we would categorize it. We would talk about it at the all hands meeting. And we took that to the nth degree. So we treated those as bug reports. And there are times where it's like, oh, a lot of you have reported this bug in our culture or whatever, but that kind of works as designed. Like, we're not going to fix that, right?
Functions
yes, that's a bug, but it's a lower priority right now because these other things are much more burning issues, and we will solve these, within the next, 3 to 6 months. And that has been one of the most impactful kind of realizations that we had. I'll close this out. So one of the things that HubSpot is most known for outside of kind of inbound marketing and now CRM and customer platforms is our culture. That's the thing. And so that product is quite possibly even better known than our core product, right? It's weird how that's turned out. But if I could give one piece of advice and it doesn't even matter what stage of company you are, is culture super important. Treat it like a product. And if you think of it as a product, the one takeaway would be the mistake most startups will make and most startup founders and founding teams will make is they think their job around culture. It's like, oh no, we think culture is super important. And as long as we can preserve our startup culture, then we have won. That's what success looks like, is preserving our culture, not losing that. And I think that's misguided. And the reason it's misguided is that if you think of culture as a product, in the same way that a product is never done, you iterate on it because the needs of the customers will change over time.
Yep.
A culture is also not done. Now, you can have product philosophies that carry across product portfolios and across decades. You can have core values that are constant, but the actual culture and the way it manifests will likely need to change over time, needs to be iterated on. Anyway, thank you for coming to my TED Talk on culture. But
well, I'm going to extend your analogy. You said, people can report bugs and it might be, that's a high priority bug, or it might be that actually works as intended. I'll extend the analogy. There's also feature requests, right, that come in over time. And I love you calling it a roadmap. We talk about culture in the last couple of years, at least since I joined GitKraken, in the same way that it's a product. It is a living, breathing thing. And if it's not tended to, it can decay, it can erode. And by the way, the culture that we have today won't serve us well 2 years from now, as the company grows, as the portfolio grows, as our responsibilities and opportunities grow. Yes. And so I will echo what you said, thinking of it as a roadmap, thinking of it as this ever-changing, living, breathing thing that requires time and attention. There's debt that needs to be paid down. There's bugs that need to be fixed. There's features and improvements and iterations that you'll go through. And the second that you set it and forget it, it begins to atrophy. And it's just like software. The earlier you catch it, it's easy to keep up. The longer you let it go, the more expensive and painful and harmful it becomes.
Yes.
Awesome. Shifting gears a little bit, we were talking about chat, and the name of the product in HubSpot is ChatSpot. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's ChatSpot.
Okay.
Yeah. ChatSpot is a natural language interface. It's a bot application. So think about ChatGPT, which pretty much everyone has seen and used. If ChatGPT and HubSpot had a baby, right? So it's like a natural language chat interface for marketing and salespeople to do marketing and salesy things, right? Through a natural language interface. And so once again, kind of given the audience on here, I think one of the biggest transformations we are living through right now as software developers and product builders is around And yes, generative AI is super interesting. And most of the excitement around generative AI is like, oh, I can type a prompt in and get a 1,000-word blog post, or I can create content, and that's super exciting and super fun. I think the future opportunity is not having generative AI generate something for human consumption. It's having it generate things for computer consumption. And so let's dig into this just a little bit. So anyone that's ever built software, every company that's ever built software always says, to varying degrees, like, oh, we build easy, intuitive applications. That's our different, versus the guys from 10 years ago, or whoever it was. And that is fundamentally a lie. And the reason it's a lie, right, is if you just look at that word intuition, it's like, let's say you're sitting in, we'll pick any product of choice. Let's say Excel. Most people are familiar. It's like, oh, I want to take all the negative numbers in this Excel file and make them red if they're negative, format them a specific way. Like, you sort of have to have, so you have your thing that you're trying to do with the software in your head. And then you have to go through a very specific set of swipes and clicks and touches and whatever. You have to sort of know the software and know how to do the thing you're trying to do. The thing you're trying to do is very clear in your head. It's like, I want all negative numbers to be red, right? That's the thing. Or I'm trying to build a report in HubSpot that shows me my sales last quarter from Europe, whatever it happens to be. And so that's not intuitive at all, right? It's like we're translating our intent as humans into the language that the software understands in some form of UI as the designers kind of created it. And so now, for the first time literally in human history, and I've tried this, by the way, I've been obsessed with this idea of like, okay, well, if we truly wanted to create intuitive software, we would allow the user to just type in what it is they're trying to do, make all the negative numbers red, or create a report of sales in Europe last quarter, and then the software just does that. And now that is actually possible. It literally was not possible. I know this because I have tried multiple times to do this with machine learning technology and natural language processing, both open source and closed source, over the span of at least the last 6 years, if not longer. But now with generative AI, one thing that's kind of misunderstood is these large language models are really good at understanding human language, and that's great. But their output, both what they consume in and what they put out, is basically text. And it just so happens a lot of the training data that we use for LLMs is English corpus knowledge of, reading Wikipedia and the entire internet, all of human knowledge, and building a deep learning network. But it can also do other things, right? Which is generate code, because that's really what we're talking. So what ChatSpot effectively does to say, oh, let the user type in a natural language prompt. Here's what they're trying to do in HubSpot, let's say. Then use that to generate code. So imagine if you had like 1,000 developers at your beck and call, Matt. It's like, oh, here's the thing I want to be done within HubSpot or whatever applications you're using. And they were super fast and they were at your beck and call. They would go write a piece of code, and they were super fast, so it would be done in like 5 minutes. And then you'd run that code. And that's essentially what ChatSpot is, right? It'll take the natural language query in, generate in our domain-specific language. It'll make the right API calls to HubSpot or wherever it needs to go to pull the data together, reformulate the response back in a way that's going to be meaningful to you, and say, here's the thing you asked for, right? And across every industry that there is in software right now, this is the big transformation. This is the big opportunity. It's as big as moving from client server to the web when we move to browser-based applications versus things that lived in your client. This is going to be the next thing, in my mind. I mean, it's going to take years. Some industries will move faster than others, but it's a massive opportunity for everyone listening.
You've written a lot about chat as the UI of the future, the interface with software. Do you think that extends across spaces? Is that, specific to, a certain type of applications? Or do you kind of see that, like, the GUI, the point and click, I have to type things in, starts to be supplanted or even improved upon by chat as the interface? Yeah,
I think it's a great question. So I think chat is going to augment user interfaces and user experiences, right? So there's a lot to be said for these kind of natural language chat-based interfaces. And the examples, I gave you were somewhat contrived, right? Because they happen to lend themselves well. It's like, oh, it's hard to do it, but it's very easy for me to express it in my head. But there are a class of problems for which a traditional visual UI is actually more meaningful. This is particularly like you're trying to discover something. You're doing, you're trying to kind of find your way through a particular body of knowledge or whatever. There's certain things where the visual interface makes much more sense, because then you can do sort of like a guided. Because the issue with chat is you have the blank canvas syndrome. You don't even know how to formulate the thing you're asking for, right? It's like, whereas, UIs have been designed with an onboarding experience in mind that says, oh, when you start, we're going to help you become accustomed with the software, just like games work, business applications, same thing. And so over time, I think we're going to see a hybrid. We're going to see more and more natural language embedded inside classic UIs. And they will help you do the things because some things will be easier just to express it. But then some things will be easier kind of rendered in a visual UI or kind of and this is sort of what ChatSpot does with like report building. It's like, oh, you can describe the report you want, but then we're going to put you into the HubSpot report builder to fine tune it. Because then it starts to get annoying trying to type. It's like, okay, well, you're asking me to pick amongst these things, whatever. Like, I don't even know what the choice of options are. Drop-down lists where I can just tell you the constraint and here are the things you should be choosing from. And that's a much better overall experience than trying to force someone to kind of guess at what the actual word is. So English is great for lots of things, or natural language is great for lots of things, but not everything. So I think we're going to move towards this kind of augmentation model. But I think more and more we'll recognize that these are things that are easier for the user than actually, in some ways. A message to the kind of product managers out there and the builders and the founders is that one of the nicest things about on the kind of building side of it of chat UX is around the ability to experiment really quickly. So let's say you have a new feature idea. It's like, oh, here's this idea that occurred to me, and the idea itself is actually not that hard to implement, right? It's like, okay, we get it. But once you have a UI, like an actual UI in the mix, you have to go then design that UI. There's lots of degrees of freedom. It's like, okay, well, what should we ask for? How is this laid out? And now you have a whole other person that has to be involved in that process. With ChatSpot, like we get requests all the time, and that's like product management nirvana, right? It's like I know what people want to do in ChatSpot by virtue of just looking through the logs every night, right? It's like, oh, here are the things and here are the patterns of they want to be able to do this, and that's a reasonable thing to be able to want to do in ChatSpot. We don't do it yet. Let's go do it. But then you can implement it, right? It's like, oh, I don't have to design a UI. I can say, here are the 5 ways someone might express that.
Right.
Then you give them an example inside the app and say, oh, by the way, we support this now. Ask questions like this. And here's a sample prompt of us telling you SEO research or whatever. Here's a way to express that. And people use it like in 24 hours, you can do something that would have taken like weeks, right? If you had to go through the classic design a UI, roll out the UI, figure out whether it's working. How do you solve the discoverability problem? It's like, oh, you just tell them.
Right.
You don't have to worry about gating or anything because it's like, okay, well, if they don't know about the fact that that prompt is even supported, you can just send an email to a small percentage of people and say, oh, by the way, try this prompt, right? Like that's
you don't have to put it behind a preview flag or like an insiders group.
I haven't been this excited since like V1 of the web in the late 90s, right? It's like, this is, really? I went through mobile, as we all did, went through the social thing, and it was good, right? Don't get me wrong. That was awesome. Gave us Uber, gave us lots of great applications. But this is like a tear in the fabric of the universe level kind of evolution, right? It's not just because it can write a blog post or whatever, just because the primitives that it unlocks are just so profound. It's like, okay, well, and now we're just starting to discover, it's like, okay, well, anything that can be represented in a textual form, these large language models can consume. Music. Like, in Western style classical music, you can represent music as a series of letters with annotations, sharps and flats, and that's it. That's the vocabulary of music. Right. And there's a large body of music, and we've already done this now, right? It's like, oh, I'm going to index every piece of music that ever was. I'm going to classify it into genres. I'm going to then be able to generate music that sounds an awful lot like music that's been, but is actually original, right? And so you would never have thought that a large language model would be able to produce music, but it uses the exact same technology that we use to generate a blog post.
Let's take the conversation around generative AI and bring it into the world and present and future of software development. What type of impact do you think that AI has on software developers and software development as we go forward 1 year, 5 years, 15 years?
Yep. So the impact we're already seeing is around improving developer productivity. So if you're not using a product like GitHub Copilot, and there are other ones out there, you should be. It doesn't matter where in the evolution of whether you've been writing code for 30 years or 3 months, it works. This is not one of those fad like, oh, I can't believe that a coding tool, having coded for 30 years, that's ever gonna. It's like, yeah, I'm not writing like simple for loops that are going to sort something or whatever. That's not what I do. Like, I do much higher falutin stuff than that. Like, no, it will improve your productivity, period. So that's like thing number one. Then kind of the next step from that, I think the thing we need to be mindful of is that so generative AI is going to change software development in a very fundamental way, and it's a little bit like, and this is sort of the kind of evolution of software development generally, right? We've been increasingly moving towards higher and higher levels of abstraction. We went from machine code to assembly to C to C++ to the interpretive languages, and there's certainly patterns to that. But the most fundamental thing that always seems to get better, and we take half steps back sometimes, but is to allow developers to work at higher levels of abstraction and being closer and closer to the problem versus having to deal with the intricacies of how a particular architecture or a particular language works. And so what I think generative AI is going to open up is a level of abstraction that we've never experienced before, which is, so right now, if you're in GitHub Copilot or something, like you're in your IDE of choice, whatever it happens to be, and you can like leave a comment, I'm writing a function here, the parameters or whatever, and it'll take a pretty good pass at writing out the code for you, and you can review it, and that's all good. In the future, I think where this winds up is that we're going to have like multimodal development, which is we all know about writing functions in whatever language you're writing about, but imagine if like some of the code in your application was actually English, that you don't have to do code generation or anything. You're just like, oh, here's a function that does this, and you just describe the function, and you don't see any code. It's just there. It's like when you use a library, like you look at the API of the library, but you don't really, unless you need to, dig into the internals of like what the implementation is. That's the whole point of having an API or having a layer of abstraction between you. So imagine a layer of abstraction which lets you articulate the thing you're looking to do in your natural language, whatever it happens to be. We'll use English for now. It's the most common one. So I think we're going to see that. And so that's going to be one kind of track of evolution. So we talked about developer productivity. That's going to continue to get better. You should be using it. We're going to see this kind of multimodal environment. The other one, I probably should have put this second, is around, it's going to bring new people into the fold, right? And we've had conversations around like kind of low code, no code for decades, right? And the problem with all of the prior implementations of low code, no code is that they basically just swapped out kind of one manifestation of imperative code for another. It's like, oh, you don't have to write like an if block or a for loop or something like that. We're going to let you do it visually, right? It's like, yeah, but I'm still having to think about conditional logic. I have to know what a loop is, and I have to understand the scope or whatever it is, right? Yes, maybe it's visual, but it doesn't really take away, like, it's just code in visual form, I guess is what I'm saying. It's not no code, right? It's code in visual form.
It's a different learning curve.
Most of those implementations.
It might be a more accessible learning curve, but it's still a learning curve.
Yes.
Right.
But now we're getting to the point where certain kinds and classes of applications you actually can do literally with no code, right? Like, okay, if it's a relatively known problem, we're seeing some early examples of this from the LLMs around like building simple games or simple kind of full-fledged but simple applications on the web that exists, and they may not get it right the first time, but it's going to get better. So what's going to happen is we're going to see new people come into the kind of software development arena, which I fundamentally think is actually a good thing for professional developers. And here's why. Because what it does is it kind of raises the impact we as kind of professional developers that have been, let's say, classically trained or empirically trained, it raises kind of the value that we can bring in terms of like, okay, well, the need to kind of understand problems, the need to kind of understand technology and how all this stuff really kind of works is going to be even more important, because we're going to see lots of noise on the lower end because lots of new things people learning. It's like, okay, that's great.
Right.
But as soon as you get to like anything of scale, it's going to matter in terms of what the maintainability of the code is, or it's going to matter when you decide it's like, oh, we're going to build product number 2 in our portfolio, and how do we then like reuse some of the code from the thing that we didn't actually write? All of that stuff is going to become important. Collaboration is going to be important. These kind of skills around not just being able to, and which has always been important. So it's not just about, in my mind, when you write code, the best developers, right, and this idea is not mine, but the way I'm going to say it is mine, is that the best developers write code not for the computer to kind of run it. It's for humans that will come down stream from them later, or your future self? Like, is it easy to understand? So don't write code that's going to be the fastest or uses the least memory footprint. That's the easiest way to kind of move towards obsolescence. Try to say, okay, here's the simplest, most elegant manifestation that's the easiest to understand for others and for me as to how this thing does what it does. And that is an art form. And yes, large language models will likely get better at that too, just in the same way they got better at writing. But that's the skill I think that we should still continue to learn, continue to teach the next generation, is around problem solving, empathy, being close to the customer, close to your teammates, in terms of like very few applications are created like as a single person solo effort, right? And they're usually team efforts.
Dharmesh, thanks so much for taking the time. Really great. I'm sure tens of thousands of developers around the world are going to get to listen in on this conversation and benefit from your learnings and your journey. So I can't thank you enough.
Thanks for having me. This was a lot of fun.
All right. Testing, testing. 1, 2, 3. All right. It is me, Chris's mysterious coworker, Allison. I have been hanging out with you guys, moderating the chat, but just wanted to pop in and say thank you for tuning into our first live stream for DevX Days. We really appreciate you catching us live, and we will also be live tomorrow at the same time, same place on social. Again, just want to, while I'm here, plug DevX Days real quick. You can scan this QR code with your phone, or you can go to our website and use the code DEVEXDAYS24 to get a really big discount on GitKraken Pro. Whether you're interested in getting your first Pro seat or if you want to acquire additional Pro seats, this is our lowest price of the year. So feel free to give that a check out there. The coupon code is case sensitive, by the way, so just keep that in mind. Also, as part of DevX Days, we are sponsoring open source projects on GitHub. So feel free to comment under any of our social posts, or you can make a post yourself and tag us at GitKraken with the hashtag DEVEXDAYS24 with a project you're working on or a project from someone else that you think is really cool and deserves the sponsorship. All right. Thanks again, everyone. Hope you all have a wonderful rest of your Monday. Thanks to everyone in the chat for participating. We hope to see you again later this week and tomorrow. We will catch y'all live. Thanks again.